What you're saying and what that letter says is it sounds like it's a really slippery slope for science in general, for medicine and abortion access. Just last year, as we saw, Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, and the legality of these abortion pills are now in question. So what's next?
It is a slippery slope. And I think in the aftermath of the Dobbs decision, you saw a lot of reproductive rights activists saying, birth control could be next, Plan B could be next, that's emergency contraception. We've seen that on a state-by-state level. This ruling from the Texas judge invoked the Comstock Act of 1873. I'm going to say that again, 1873, which basically prohibited immoral materials from being mailed. So what does that mean for birth control? I think there are people who, in the aftermath of Dobbs, thought feminists and women's rights activists were overreacting in their response. But I interviewed former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton a few weeks ago, and she basically said the fight is not over. We need to keep fighting against the rollbacks of our rights because they're not going to stop at abortion.
I want to talk about the response of voters because voters on both sides of the aisle are not a fan of this. According to a recent Ipsos poll, 82% of Democrats and 53% of Republicans do not support banning this abortion pill. So when was the last time you saw the majority of both parties actually agreeing on something, especially in these highly partisan times, rather? And this is an issue that seems to be wildly unpopular on both sides of the aisle.
I would point to gun control, where 90% of Americans feel that there should be some sort of regulation there, but that's a separate issue. I think what we're seeing is there are actually more issues than not where there's broad political, or rather broad public agreement. It's not 100%. You're never going to get 100% agreement on all the intricacies of abortion. There are many Americans who support some restrictions in some capacity, but we have seen that the overturning of Roe is broadly unpopular. And it has in turn driven people to the polls, driven these outcomes in local races where pro-choice, pro-abortion, pro-reproductive health candidates are succeeding, because I think people want to have the full range of healthcare options available to them.
Let's talk about the politics of this here. Representative Nancy Mace, she's a Republican from South Carolina, said on CNN earlier this week that Republicans are largely on the wrong side of the abortion issue. And the overturning of Roe v. Wade was cited as one of the reasons a red wave failed to materialize for the midterms. Earlier this month, a liberal judge in Wisconsin marked the first time in over a decade that it would give the state's Supreme Court a liberal majority. And she won by 11 points. And if we remember, in 2020 in Wisconsin, Joe Biden only won by less than 1 point. So this is a huge issue. Why are Republicans making this their strategy? It seems to be a losing strategy based on that data.
It does seem to be a losing strategy, but I think it has energized the fringe elements of the base. There are people who want to see abortion banned. There are people who would even say they want to see it banned nationwide. The states' rights argument is what we saw in the Dobbs decision, but there are plenty of people who say it is against my personal morals, it is against my personal religion. It is not a uniform issue, and we see that within the Republican Party. And I think the Republican Party has to contend with itself. Are they willing to keep taking this extremist position that affects the lives of millions of women?
This whole conversation, the note that keeps popping up is that this is a slippery slope. As you cited in your conversation with Hillary Clinton, the fight is not done yet when it comes to women's rights. So what does this mean for that fight in general?
You can't get complacent, you can't get tired. That's what I have heard from my sources. I think the barrage of headlines, not just this year, not just last year, it's been happening in 2021, in 2020, in 2019. You can keep going back. Ever since Roe was decided, people have been fighting to remove that right from women. And I think we see this with a lot of social justice issues. People get tired. Anger is not a sustainable emotion. So I think those who wish to fight for it have to find some other emotion and just kind of bear down and buckle in and be prepared to tell people that, hey, referencing an act from 1873 in 2023 is maybe not the best political strategy.
Maggie McGrath, I appreciate you coming on here. And as updates come, I hope you come back.
I will. Thank you so much.